You won't believe how a long-planned presidential assassination can turn into a bizarre, no, frankly, the most hilarious farce. First up, Richard Lawrence. This absolute madman was hiding behind a pillar, waiting for President Andrew Jackson to come out of the Capitol building. His mission? Murder. And his motivation was driven by two facts. One, that President Jackson had killed his father, and two, that he himself was the rightful king, Richard III of England. There is not a single grain of truth to either of those claims, but hey, minor details, right? So, as Jackson exits the building, Richard leaps out and fires his pistol, and it misfires. But get this, he had a second pistol. He aims, he fires, and it also misfires. At this point, President Jackson, being the absolute unit that he was, decides he's had enough of this nonsense. He proceeds to attack Richard and beat him senseless with his own cane, because that's the kind of hands-on leadership we apparently had back then. But not all assassination attempts are stopped by faulty pistols. Sometimes the plot is so dangerous, the only way to survive is to not show up at all. Just ask Abraham Lincoln. In 1861, as the president-elect was traveling to his inauguration, his security team uncovered a massive conspiracy that came to be known as the Baltimore Plot. A group of Southern sympathizers planned to ambush and kill him as his train passed through Baltimore. To get around this, Lincoln's security team had to get creative. They pulled off a classic bait and switch. They smuggled him through the city in the dead of night, in disguise, on a secret, unscheduled train. Meanwhile, a decoy train rolled along the heavily publicized route. The assassins were left waiting for a man who was already safe and sound in Washington, D.C. Of course, not every failed plan is so dramatic. Sometimes they fail for reasons that are just deeply embarrassing. Take the guy who tried to get Franklin Delano Roosevelt. His name was Walter Harold Best, and for almost 2 weeks, he stalked the president, just waiting for the perfect moment to strike. After weeks of planning, he was finally ready. But before he could pull the trigger, he got arrested. Was it for the elaborate assassination plot? Did a vigilant Secret Service agent take him down? Nope, he got arrested for jaywalking. And as if that wasn't bad enough, his own wife then called the cops on him to report the actual plot. This guy's life was just a whole series of unfortunate events. But let's jump forward in time to a plan that was anything but mundane. In 1974, a man named Samuel Back decided he was going to kill President Richard Nixon. His plan sounds like something from a modern action movie: hijack a passenger jet and crash it directly into the White House. This wasn't just some fantasy, he actually put it into motion. He killed an airport police officer, stormed a DC-9 jet, sitting on the tarmac, and demanded the pilots take off. During a tense standoff, after police managed to shoot him through the plane's door, Back took his own life before they could breach the cockpit. The plane never left the ground, and one of the most audacious assassination plots in history ended right there. Now that plan was pure, violent chaos. But sometimes, the threat isn't a single, explosive event. Sometimes, it's just a relentless string of bad luck for the guy in the Oval Office. Just ask Gerald Ford, who somehow survived 2 separate assassination attempts in just 17 days. First, a follower of Charles Manson named Squeaky, from A, pointed a .45 caliber pistol right at him, but she'd forgotten to chamber a round. The gun just clicked. Then, just 17 days later, another woman, Sarah Jane Moore, actually fired a shot at him, but a former Marine in the crowd, a hero named Oliver Sipple, grabbed her arm at the last second, causing the bullet to fly wild. Ford just walked away from both. So you've got assassins motivated by cults and personal failure, but what about assassins motivated by a simple online feud? And what happens when the Secret Service gets it completely and hilariously wrong? This brings us to the Obama presidency. The Secret Service intercepted an envelope addressed to the president containing the deadly poison, Ricin. They moved fast, tracking the sender down to an Elvis impersonator named Kevin Curtis. Imagine this scene, a tense, 7-hour interrogation. The fate of the nation might be at stake. They finally lean in and ask him the key question: "Are you familiar with Ricin?" To which Kevin, bless his heart, famously replied, "I don't like rice, I don't really eat rice. It was at that moment that the agents realized they probably had the wrong guy. The real culprit turned out to be a rival martial arts instructor who had framed the Elvis impersonator. Not all plots are so complex, though sometimes the fatal flaw is much simpler, like the attempt against John F. Kennedy about a month after he won the election. This dude, Richard Pavlik, had his car filled to the brim with dynamite. Planning to just ram JFK's motorcade, he stalked the president-elect across multiple states. But he made one critical mistake. He kept sending postcards from his travels back to the postmaster in his hometown. The postmaster noticed that Pavlik's postcards were always coming from the same cities. JFK was visiting, got suspicious, and reported him. The Secret Service found him, and his car full of dynamite, before he could act. And then there are the plans that are just weird. One time, a guy just stole a small Cessna plane and crashed it into the White House garden. Was he aiming for the president? We have no idea. The president wasn't even home. But the award for the most legendary survival story of all time has to go to Teddy Roosevelt. In 1912, a man named John Schrank, who claimed the ghost of the assassinated President McKinley had told him to do it, shot Roosevelt at close range as he was heading to give a speech. The crowd immediately pounced on the shooter, but Roosevelt, amazingly, got back up. It turns out the bullet's path had been slowed by his thick overcoat, his metal eyeglasses case, and a folded, 50-page copy of the very speech he was about to give. Instead of going to the hospital, like any normal person who had just been shot in the chest, Roosevelt proceeded to get on stage and give that speech for 90 minutes, with a bullet lodged in his chest. That, my friends, is a legend right there. If you enjoyed these bizarre tales from history, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on what's next.